Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, my name is Holly. Today I'm going to kind of celebrate the fact that the year is over. Tomorrow begins 2025, which is kind of insane. But I wanted to celebrate by going through all of the books that I've read this year and tier ranking them. I read, I think, 54 books this year, which I'm really proud of. And so I want to just take a stroll down memory lane, if you will, and put each one into its own category. This will loosely kind of follow my star ratings. So obviously, if a book was 5 stars, it's probably going to be in the top tier, and so on. Without further ado, let's look at my tiers. This first top tier, I fear this is a part of me now. This tier is reserved for books that I think about every single day, or it was just so impactful to me that I took aspects of the book or the characters or something like that and apply it to my daily life. Like, it really changed who I am as a person, and I fear it's just, as it says, part of me now. The next tier is obsessed. These are books that I absolutely love, probably think about all the time, and I just love them. I'm obsessed with them, but they're not necessarily part of who I am. Then we have What a Treat. I loved these books. They were so fun. I would recommend them. I really enjoyed reading them. The next yellow tier is Not Gonna Yuck Your Yum, and that is for books that I didn't love, but I can see why other people would like them. So it's not that necessarily I think it's a bad book. I just don't think it's really a book for me. It was not a book that I enjoyed, but I would potentially still recommend it, especially if I know that you are into that kind of stuff. Moving on to Really Not Good. I just did not like it. I don't really see how other people would like it. Maybe it was just bad writing or a bad story, or I just really did not like it and I don't recommend it. Don't see how people like it. And finally, Why. This is just for those books that I'm like, why did this get written, and why did I read it? Now, I don't anticipate having too many books in this category. I really didn't think about what books would go into what category before filming, so I really don't know what this is going to look like in the end. But I'm not including any books that I DNF'd this year, so hopefully I don't have too many in this Y category, but we'll find out together. Let's get started. I pretty much went in alphabetical order, so this is not in the order that I read them. It looks like series have been split up, so we're just gonna kind of see what happens. Again, first, All Good People Here by Ashley Flowers. This one was good. I'm gonna put this in What a Treat. This is a thriller that I did find pretty enjoyable, and I liked the twist. I liked how it ended, so what a treat. I don't think about it often though, but I would recommend it if you're into thrillers and suspense. Next, we have An Ember in the Ashes by Sabata here. I still have not looked up how to say her name, so that is what we're going to go with. And I'm going to put this in, Obsessed, and I'm actually going to go ahead and find the second book in the series. There it is, A Torch Against the Night. So these are both in the same young adult fantasy series, and I really enjoyed reading them. I do have the last 2 books already. They're on my shelf. I just haven't gotten around to reading them yet. But I am really enjoying this story. The world building is very immersive, but also very accessible. So if you're kind of new to fantasy, I don't think this is too difficult to be kind of an entryway. I would highly recommend it. I've found it really enjoyable. The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, that is the second book. Let me find the... Why do I have the... Oh my gosh. You know what I did? That's so funny. I looked up Serpent in the Wings of Night, and it gave me Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. Okay, so we'll pretend that one of these says Serpent and the Wings of Night. I can't believe I did that and didn't even notice. This is a series about vampires. And I'm going to put both of these books, even though they're the exact same book, not supposed to be, on Obsessed. I do not like vampires. I just have never read a book or watched a movie or anything where I didn't find them cringy. So I was very suspicious going into this series, and I was fully prepared to DNF it if it just got too weird vampire for me, and it didn't. I loved it. I loved it so much. You're following this main girl who's a human in a vampire world, and it's just very, very interesting, very immersive, and very fast paced. So I did love it. Beach Read by Emily Henry. What a disappointment. Um, I'm gonna put this on Not Gonna Yuck Your Yum because I know how well loved this book is and this author. I really did not find this book good at all. The writing is good. I do enjoy Emily Henry's writing, but it just didn't hit for me. I didn't feel their romance really. I mean, I could see it, but then there was just, I didn't really appreciate the twist near the end, and I just found it really hard to root for the couple. So, for that reason, it didn't do too well with me. Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Obsessed. I loved this book. I was so invested the entire time. It made me want to get into competitive sports. I wanted to learn how to play tennis or watch it or something. Like, I was craving the Olympics while I was reading this book. Very immersive and just very much like that underdog sports story, the drama. Oh, loved it. The Christmas Party by Michaela Davids. Read this one recently and it was really not good. I can't recommend it. It was not very well written. The characters didn't really have any depth. And the big reveal, it's a thriller, the big reveal plot twist made no sense. Very disappointed. The Dirty Parts of the Bible. This was a graphic novel, the first graphic novel I've read, and I'm gonna put it on What a Treat because it was good. I've also just found that graphic novels are not for me though, but I did enjoy the story. This next book is actually part of a series that is the second, that's False Gods. I can't remember who wrote it. So this is part of the Horus Heresy. I guess you can call it the original trilogy, but it goes up to like 6 books, I think. And the first one is Horus Rising. All 3 of these books, while they are part of the same series, are all written by different authors. I couldn't notice though. I could not tell that they were written by different authors. It was seamless throughout the series. And believe it or not, it's a series about Warhammer, which if you don't know what that is, neither did I. My husband got really into Warhammer this year, and it's like science fiction, gritty, grim, dark, space war. Okay. And it's been around since like, I want to say the 70s, maybe even longer. I don't really know. I'm not into Warhammer. Even after reading these books, I don't really have an interest in like playing Warhammer because it's a tabletop game and it's a video game. However, these books are a part of me, I fear. Horus Rising, False Gods, and Galaxy in Flames. This was potentially the biggest plot twist of the year. I only read this book because my husband begged me to, and it was part of like my birthday gift to him was I'm going to read the first book. And I did not expect to enjoy it. I didn't expect to really have a good time with it. I definitely did not expect to continue reading the series. But I'm now on book 4 and I'm loving it. I think about these characters all the time. I think about the story all the time, the writing, everything. It's absolutely a 10 out of 10 series for me. Highly recommend it. It was very different from what I usually read, but I ate it up. So good. Again, we have another series that is out of order. Fire Study is actually the last book in this trilogy by Maria V. Snyder. It starts with Poison Study, and I am going to put Poison Study, Magic Study, and Fire Study. Those are the 3 books in the trilogy. I'm going to put them all on What a Treat because I read Poison Study in a day. I ate it up, flew through it. It was such an easy read. Young adult fantasy, loved it. It was very interesting, very easy to get into, very easily accessible. The world building made a lot of sense. The magic system was cool. But for me, I will say that it started off really strong and then just kind of tapered out at the end. I was really not as interested by the end of it. But overall, the series as a whole, I am glad I read it. Check the trigger warnings before you read it if you are interested. But I had a really fun time with it. I'm very pleased. Next, we have Kristen Hanna. The first Kristen Hanna book I ever read was Firefly Lane. When I read this, I gave it 5 stars because I wept at the end of this book. I could not stop crying for like 15 minutes. Like the last probably 20% of the book, I was reading it on my Kindle and I started crying and I just could not stop. And I read the last 20% just in tears. And I was so emotionally attached and wrecked to it that I was like 5 stars, absolutely. Any book that can give me that level of emotional reaction is going to get 5 stars. And I stand by that. I still want to give that book 5 stars, but the further away from the book that I get, the more time that passes, I really don't think it's a 5 star for me anymore. So for that reason, I'm going to put it on Obsessed because I really did enjoy the story. I loved the writing, loved Kristen Hanna, and it was a very, very emotional read for me. But I don't think about it that often. Definitely not as often as some other Kristen Hanna books that I've read. But I still really, really enjoyed it. So, Obsessed. Speaking of Kristen Hanna, we now have The Four Winds, which is the second book by her I read, and I fear this is a part of me. Four Winds was so descriptive and immersive. I know I keep using that word, but it's the best word to describe how her books make me feel because I was so invested to this story that I prayed for the family. They're not real. This is not actually happening, but I was that into it, and I was that like the characters were so believable. Their story was so believable. I was so emotionally invested that I was like, oh my gosh, I hope they make it through, and I started praying for them. Anyway, I think about this book all the time. I related so heavily to the main character, and so I do think that I kind of absorbed a little bit of that character and that story, and it's part of my soul now, and I will never stop thinking about that book. Jojo Moyes, The Giver of Stars, obsessed. I loved this book so much. It gave Kristen Hanna vibes, even though it's not Kristen Hanna, but it was so cozy. It was so cozy. It was so unexpected, and it was such a quick read. I loved it. I loved getting to know all the different characters and just following along on their story and everything that happened with them. And I do think about that book from time to time. I loved it. So fun. Gleam, Glint, and Glow by Raven Kennedy. The first book, Guild. Okay, so I started this series like end of December last year, and I read the first 4 books of the series all within like a week or two. I pounded them. Like I started it and couldn't put them down. I gave them all 1 star though. Like I think they're some of the worst books ever, but something about it, I had to know what was going to happen. Like I had to know. The first book, I picked it up and immediately, the opening scene, I was like, yeah, no, this is not going to work. But I had nothing else to do, so I just kept reading. And then I finished the book and was like, yeah, I'm not continuing the series. This is so dumb. This is so stupid. I don't like the way it's written. I don't like the characters. I don't like the story. I don't like literally anything about it. And then the next day I picked up the second book. Like I still can't rationalize it in my mind why I read 4 books. And I hated them. It was like bad reality TV. You know, like it's just like a guilty pleasure that you have where it's like this is not good. I need more. Like, I need to know where this is going. So, I honestly could not tell you a single thing that happens in any of these books, but I'm going to put them on Y. And I don't know what order they go in. They're just going to go here. I think it says more about me that I continued reading them and less about the books themselves. They were awful. They were so bad. But I kept reading them. But I don't think that they ever should have seen the light of day, to be honest. So moving right along, Gleanings. This is actually not a spin-off, but a collection of short stories from the Scythe trilogy that I haven't gotten to yet. But I'm going to go ahead and put this on What a Treat. So basically, this is, like I said, just a collection of short stories. Some of them happened way before the contents of the Scythe trilogy. Some of them happened during, some happened after. And so it was a nice little, almost like, not epilogue, because you don't really go back and revisit the main characters from the Scythe trilogy. You just get more glimpses into the world, which I loved, because I think that the Scythe trilogy was set in such an interesting setting that it was really nice being able to see more and just see random characters that existed hundreds of years before this like story takes place. And it was just fun. It was really interesting, and it was a treat. Alice Feeney, Good Bad Girl. What was this book about? It was a thriller. I read it around the same time that I read a lot of thrillers, but I do remember liking this one. I'm going to put it on What a Treat. I remember it being good. The plot twists surprised me and made sense, so I was pleased with it. The Grace Year. The Grace Year was a lot. It was kind of hard at times to read. It feels wrong to put it on What a Treat. But I'm not obsessed. I don't think about it often. But it was a very monumental read for me, and it did impact me a lot. I don't want to get into it too much. The more I think about it, the more I want to talk about it. So we're just going to cut it off short and leave it at What a Treat. Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. This was his memoir? Is that what you... It's not an autobiography, right? It's a memoir. He wrote a book about himself. I'll just say I liked Matthew McConaughey a lot more before reading this book. So I'm not going to yuck your yum. I read the audio, or I listened to the audiobook, and he was the one that read it, so that was really cool. There was a lot from it that I kind of, I found it interesting to learn more about him. I love learning about people, but the majority of the contents, I do feel like I would be better off not having known, which is really unfortunate because I liked him. I still like him. I just try to purge the book from my memory. So, but a lot of people really do like it. Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli? Ciccarelli? I don't know. By her. And this one is going to go on What a Treat. I read this one earlier in the year, really liked it, and then was furious that the second book I don't think it comes out until 2025. Yeah, I don't think it comes out until like April or something. But it was good. It had a different take. It's a young adult fantasy about a witch and a witch hunter type of situation. And it went in a different direction than I expected, and I appreciate that. And the twist totally got me. So yes, I remember this one now. What a treat. I really did like this one. Alice Feeney, His and Hers. Really not good. Which hurts me to say about Alice Feeney because I love Alice Feeney, but oh my gosh, honey, that was not necessary. The amount of trauma in that book, overkill for one, and two, That's not a plot twist, babe. That was just, I don't even have words for how bad that was. I was furious. You could have chosen anyone else. The plot twist didn't make sense. The plot twist didn't make sense, babe. And because of that and the trauma, those two things, I can't recommend this book. If you liked it, great, but I will tell you to your face, I did not enjoy this book. I wanted to so bad. But the trauma and the horrible plot twist ruined it for me. Stephen King's Holly. I did in fact pick this book up solely because it is my name. Did I realize that it was the third book in a trilogy? No, I didn't. So that was a little rough. But it was good. What a treat. I had read, and we're going to talk about it here in just a second. This is the second Stephen King I read. The first one was Misery, and I expected Holly to give me that same vibe, and it didn't. It felt more like it was suspense, but I wasn't really on the edge of my seat. I don't know. It just felt a little slow for me, and I really wanted more things to be happening. So, The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I was late to the game on this one. I feel like everyone read this a long time ago. I just now read it this month, and I liked it. That's really all I have to say about it. I won't be reading the next one, but I did like this one. I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, another memoir. And I really didn't know that much about Jeanette McCurdy prior to reading this memoir. Like, she wasn't an actress that I sought out or a celebrity that I really cared that much about. But reading this book, it was hard. And I did the audiobook, so again, she narrated it, and just hearing all of the things that she's gone through, I don't even feel like I can put this on the ranking list anywhere because it feels wrong to put it in obsessed because that sounds weird, but this book just had a really big impact on me, and it really did affect me, and I think that everyone should read it. So, put it on obsessed. Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Loved it, but I honestly haven't thought about it since. While I read it, I think I read it on my cruise this year. So enjoyed it. Had such a fun time with it. Loved the writing, loved the romance, loved just the overall story. But then when I finished it, I just moved on to another book. It didn't really stick with me that much. So, what a treat. Killer Instinct is the second in the Natural series. I've been meaning to finish this series all year because I bought the first Naturals, really early this year. And I finally got around to reading it, liked it, read the second one, liked it. But I think I've just come to the decision that while I like it, I don't like it enough to finish the series. I never think about it. Don't really care what happens to any of the characters. Like, in my mind, it's over. It's done. It is also too young adult for me. I am 25, so I feel myself aging out of young adult in pretty much every genre except fantasy. So for this to be like young adult, thriller, mystery, it's basically Criminal Minds but for teenagers. And it just didn't hit the way it would have hit if I read this in high school. So for that reason, I'm between What a Treat and Not Gonna Yuck Your Yum because I think I rated them both like 3 stars, 4 stars, something like that. Like, they were good for what they were. For being young adult, mystery, thriller, suspense, they were good. I would have eaten them up in high school. Eaten them up. But now, I'm gonna put on Not Gonna Yuck Your Yum, but they were good. They were entertaining. They were entertaining. Lovely War. Obsessed. Obsessed. It is a story about young love during World War I think. Maybe 2. I don't really remember. but told from or narrated by different Greek gods. So unique. I loved it. You don't have to know anything about Greek mythology or history to enjoy this. And I don't. And I loved it. Oh, I loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. Very impactful writing, unique storytelling. It was just sweet. Sweet young love. I loved it. The Maidens. Really not good. Which was such a letdown because I read The Silent Patient probably back in like 2019. I think I read The Silent Patient and I loved it. So I was like, oh, I want to read another book by Alex Michaelides. And this one just didn't do it for me. I listened to the audiobook on a road trip. So I essentially read it all in one day, basically. And it didn't hit. I wanted it to, but it wasn't really resonating with me. And then the plot twist, I hated it. It made no sense. It was just so out of left field. And it really ruined the whole book for me. So that sucked. Me Before You. Obsessed. This was the first Jojo Moyes book I read, and I loved it. I had never seen or read the Me Before You story, so I went into it completely blind. I did guess what was going to happen. I mean, I think it's pretty easy if you're reading it to kind of predict what's going to happen, but it wasn't in like a frustrating, like, oh, I know what's going to happen. It was just like more of a, oh my gosh, I know what's going to happen and I'm not ready for it. Like, it was very emotional, very funny, witty, sweet. I loved it. And then I did watch the movie, and I liked the movie too. Misery by Stephen King. Like I was saying, this is the first Stephen King I've read, and oh my gosh, I was sweating. I was on the edge of my seat. I couldn't put it down, but I also didn't want to read it. It is definitely horror, thriller, suspense, all of that. Rough, scary. Like, it was just so many things, and it was very, very, very good. It had me like creeped out when I was done, and I was like, it was on my mind for a very long time after I read it. And if you are looking for something, especially a winter read, because this takes place in the winter, if you are looking for something to like creep you out and stress you out and like have you yelling at the character in the book, like, don't do that, don't do that, read this book. So good. So good. No Exit by Taylor Adams. This is another thriller, and it gave me the same vibes. This one also is a really good winter read. I read it in the summer, so that was a little bit of like a disconnect because they're caught in a blizzard. But the writing was so good that I fully expected, like when I left my house, I thought it was going to be snowing. But I live in East Texas and it was summer, so it was like 100 degrees. But so good. This one is also a bit gruesome, violent, suspenseful, scary, thrilling, mystery. What's going to happen? I'm on the edge of my seat. I don't want to know what happens. I have to know what happens. So good. Love it. I need to read another Taylor Adams after that. One Dark Window. Okay, this one and Two Twisted Crowns I literally read this week. These books have been on my TBR for probably a year now, at least 6 months. Like, they've been on my TBR for a while. They're on Kindle Unlimited, and I just kept putting it off. I don't know why. I was just like, oh yeah, I'll get to it eventually. I'll get to it eventually. I finally got to them, and oh my gosh, they're so good. I cannot believe it took me this long to read them. The world building is very good. Again, young adult fantasy. Good world building, very interesting magic system. I really liked the characters, loved the story, and it's very, very unique, and I loved it. I did like the second book a little bit more than the first book, but I think they're gonna both go in obsessed because the way that the story ended really elevated One Dark Window for me because I loved it. It wasn't a bad book at all, but I was just like, oh, like I initially gave it like 3.5 stars. After reading Two Twisted Crowns, I gave them both 4 stars because it was just so good. I highly recommend if you've not read them yet and you like fantasy, read them. Oh my gosh, it's just a duology, so you're not like committed to a 5 book long series or anything. It's just 2 books and they're both like 300 to 400 pages. So it's a good one. Powerless. I feel like I should put this on Not Gonna Yuck Your Yum, but you know what? I am yucking your yum. This is really not good. Full offense to everyone who likes this book. Why? I could not stand it. From page 1, I was like, oh, I'm gonna hate this. Okay. And again, it is partially because it is young adult, which young adult fantasy, I can normally like handle it. But this was just like insufferable young adult, which is so annoying. And also a complete rip-off plagiarism of some other books that are already out there that I read a decade ago. So that was also a big bummer for me because like it was just almost word for word a ripoff. And then the writing was really bad. The characters were not very well developed. I just didn't really have anything good to say about this book. I mean, if you liked it, great, good for you. I definitely want people to enjoy reading, but I will never recommend this to literally anyone. I did not have a good time with that book. Pride and Prejudice. I fear this is a part of me now. Granted, this was a reread. I've read it 3 times now, and it's not even a fear. I know this book is a part of me. These characters I hold them so close to my heart, both the book characters and the movie characters. I have only good things to say about this book, and I could go on for way too long, so I'm going to cut myself off here, but if I could give it 10 stars, I would. I love this book. And I need to read more Jane Austen because that's the only Jane Austen I've read, and I've read it 3 times and I love it. So that is one of my goals for the new year, is to read another Jane Austen book and see if it's just this book that I like or if I like all of her books. Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. Big letdown for me. I'm going to put it in Not Gonna Yuck Your Yum. This, unfortunately, I went into it with the wrong expectations. I did not realize that it was going to be just like a character study. There's not really a plot. You're just following these characters, and I was incredibly bored. Granted, if you like character studies and just slice of life, kind of cozy, there is like a little bit of a mystery, but it's not high stakes at all. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, when are they going to figure it out? So I definitely understand why people love this book. It's just not for me at all. Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier. This one was good. This is another thriller. It's about this woman, her son is kidnapped, and over a year goes by. They still haven't found him, but she's just unwilling to give up searching for him. Very deep, very traumatic. What a treat. I enjoyed it. The twist got me, didn't see it coming, and I thought it was pretty good. So I would recommend that if you maybe check the trigger warnings first, but it was pretty good. Didn't love the ending, but it is what it is. 6 Scorched Roses is actually a novella with the Serpent and the Wings of Night series. I think it's called The Crowns of Neoxia or something like that. That is the series, and this was just a little novella that I read in between the first 2 books that kind of gave us a little bit of backstory on some characters that we met in book 2. Short, sweet, it was really good. It didn't feel like a novella. Like, obviously it was very, very short, but like the depth that you got with the characters felt like a novel. Like, it didn't feel like a novella. So I really, really enjoyed it. Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. I read this the same time that I read Just for the Summer on my cruise, and I'm gonna put it at What a Treat. This was another, like, kind of the same vibe. I obsessed over it when I first read it, loved it so much, but the further I get away from it, the less I think about it. Thoroughly enjoyed it as I was reading it, but it's not anything that's really stuck with me. Now, this is the series that I've mentioned when I talked about Gleanings, the Scythe series, young adult, sci-fi, fantasy. It's a utopia, nobody dies, everyone lives forever. So they have these scythes, and their job is to kill people to make sure that the Earth doesn't get overpopulated. So good. I gave the whole series 5 stars. I am obsessed with this series. It was so good. I mean, the writing is incredible. The story, the places it goes, I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and I recommend it to everyone I talk to about it. It is young adult. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. So it does read young adult, but again, in a good way. And I loved it. Oh, so good. To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. This one was over 800 pages, and I finished it out of spite. I got like 300 pages in, and nothing had happened yet. 300 pages is like a normal book. Like, that's the size of a book. I had read basically a book's amount in this book, and nothing had happened yet. I should have DNF'd it, but it was just spite that got me through it. I was like, this book is not going to beat me. If I could go back, I would have DNF'd it. It just wasn't good. Great concepts, I will say. It's kind of like a first contact with aliens story set way in the future. Really cool idea, and I was just like fiending for alien content at the time because I just watched the Alien like series for the first time, and I wanted to read it. So I saw this, thought it was pretty close, thought it fit the bill, was severely disappointed. Under One Roof. I guess I'll put it in really not good. I didn't see their chemistry. I didn't care about the story. Both of the characters drove me insane. Didn't like it. It just not a good time for me personally. So, Kristen Hanna, The Women. Okay, the sun left, so had to turn on a light. Yes, The Women. So this is about the Vietnam War and their role in it. So you're following this girl who is a nurse in the Vietnam War, and it was, just like all Kristen Hanna, very emotional. Very emotional. And I thought it was extremely well done. I don't know what that was. Anyway, I'm going to put it on What a Treat, though. This is probably, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more if we got more perspectives than just one woman, because it is called The Women, and we were introduced to 3 different women, but we only got one of them's perspective. And it did feel like Kristen Hanna did a lot of research. She did a lot of research for this. Props to her. But it felt like she did all of this research and then just looked up everything that could have possibly happened to a woman during like the Vietnam War time and had it happen to this one main character. So it did get to a point where I was like, okay, this isn't really believable anymore with just how much stuff is happening to this poor girl. So I would have absolutely loved it if we could have seen like all 3 women and how they handled everything, and then just kind of divvied up all of the trauma between the 3 of them. It probably would have been a lot more believable, and I would have loved to actually get their points of view and see how they're handling things, why they don't have the same like reaction to things that our main character did. um, and it just would have been really interesting too to kind of see from all points of view how they relied on each other as women to get through this very traumatic situation. Other than that, though, I did love it. Abby Jimenez, yours truly. This is in the same world as Just for the Summer. They're like interconnected standalones, and they're also both part of the Part of Your World. That was like the first one. I haven't read that one. I don't know, but I saw yours truly when it was on Kindle Unlimited, randomly read it. And again, because they're interconnected standalone, I didn't miss out on anything by not having read the first one, but I know that I probably got glimpses into that first book, like the characters and where they are now, that didn't resonate with me because I didn't know the characters. But I don't feel like I actually missed out on anything. I loved yours truly. I thought it was so good. I think this is the one where they depict anxiety really, really well, and just a lot of things happen, and I thought it was all handled very well. Liked the writing, liked the story, liked the characters. Put on What a Treat. Last one is Wild Love by Elsie Silver. I ate up the Chestnut Spring series. That was one of the series that I read that's also by Elsie Silver when I was getting back into reading a lot more. When was that? Maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And I read the entire Chestnut Spring series like back to back to back so fast. She's a really great author, very quick reads. They are spicy, explicit. They do have more language. So I don't find myself gravitating to that as much anymore now that I know that's what that is. But I did read Wild Love just to give it a chance, and I liked it. What a treat. It was good. I find the characters interesting. It did what it was supposed to do. I will probably read that whole series, maybe. I know Wild Eyes is already out and I haven't read it yet, so who knows. But it was good and I liked it. With that being said, that is all 54 books that I read this year. I am very pleased that I read that many because my goal was to read 50 and I went a little bit over, so super happy about that. So that was kind of my rapid fire, every one of the 54 books that I read this year and how I feel about them now. Let me know down in the comments what you think about any of these books, if you would have put any of them in a different tier. Let me know if any of these books are on your TBR or if you've read them, or if you have some book suggestions that you think I would like based on where I ranked certain books. Please let me know. I'm always looking for new books to read, especially books that are not necessarily on my radar, like in a different genre. I never would have read Horse Heresy had it not been for my husband basically forcing me to read it. So I'm definitely open to trying new books outside my comfort zone, and I feel like you can just get a whole new appreciation when you do read things that you normally wouldn't. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I am so excited to start 2025, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.